Howdy, partners, and welcome to the Cowboys Versus Ninjas podcast, a brand new show where we'll be serving up daily doses of the wildest, most addictive stories you've ever heard. We're talking epic showdowns, legendary heroes, and adventures that'll leave you craving more. I'm Adrian, your trusty guide through these untamed territories of storytelling.
Oh, howdy, right back at ya.
And joining me today is Julia, a true expert when it comes to unraveling the threads of a good yarn. Ready to rustle up some excitement, Julia?
You bet, Adrian. I'm excited to see what kind of trouble we can stir up today.
Well, hold on to your hats, folks, because today we're heading to the dusty plains of a distant planet where cowboys wrangle. Wait for it. Space cattle.
Space cattle. Now, that's not something you hear every day.
That's right. We're diving into Wrangling Star Beasts, a story that drops us right smack dab in the middle of the galactic frontier where the Barlow family defends their out-of-this-world livestock from some pretty sneaky alien rustlers. First off, let's meet the Barlows. We've got Cyrus the sun, who seems to attract trouble, like a star whale to a cosmic watering hole.
Cyrus definitely seems to have a knack for finding himself in some sticky situations. I wonder if it's youthful enthusiasm or maybe he's got a bit of a rebellious streak. What do you think, Adrian?
He definitely strikes me as someone who doesn't shy away from a challenge, that's for sure. And then there's Ma, the tough-as-nails matriarch. I wouldn't want to get on her bad side.
Ma definitely seems like the kind of woman who can handle anything the frontier throws at her. And she's got Rusty, her six-legged beetle beast, by her side. That's no ordinary pet.
A beetle beast with acid spit. That's not your average riding companion. What do you make of that choice, Julia? It's just a bit of quirky world building, or there's something deeper going on?
I think it speaks to the resourcefulness of these frontier folks. They're not afraid to utilize what's available to them, even if it's a little unorthodox. Acid spit might just be the best defense against some of the nastier creatures out there.
Makes sense. And let's not forget Miri, the younger sister. She might seem like she's just along for the ride, but don't let that fool you. She's got a few tricks up her sleeve, like those stink bombs made from, well, let's just say exotic alien spices.
Miri's stink bombs are a great example of how the story blends familiar Western elements with sci-fi. It's like the author took a classic cowboy trope and gave it a wonderfully bizarre twist.
Exactly. You've got your classic cattle rustling going on, but then you throw in star whales, these massive creatures that are basically space cows, and suddenly you've got yourself a story that's both familiar and completely out of this world. Speaking of star whales, I'm curious about these creatures. They're described as having challenging personalities and teeth the size of asteroids. What exactly is beefalo in this context? Is it like space beef?
Well, they're the primary source of beefalo in this world. It seems like the author is playing with our expectations. We associate cowboys with cattle, so in this futuristic setting, we get these colossal star whales that serve the same purpose, providing food and resources.
So they're like the space equivalent of cattle, but with a whole lot more attitude. And of course, we have our villains, high-tech rustlers who set their sights on the Barlows herd.
The rustlers are an interesting contrast to the Barlows. They've got all the fancy gadgets and technology. Well, the Barlows rely on their knowledge of the land and their, let's say, unique animal companions. It sets up a classic conflict between tradition and innovation.
Right. Makes you wonder, who's going to come out on top? Is it brute force and technology, or is it grit ingenuity? And a well-placed pile of star whale dung. I guess we'll find out.
It's that clash between the old and new that really makes the story so compelling. You've got these space-age rustlers with their laser lassos and all sorts of high-tech gizmos. And then you've got the Barlows, who rely on generations of know-how and a deep understanding of their environment.
It's like David versus Goliath, but with a sci-fi twist.
Well,
and speaking of those laser lassos, how do you think those work? Is it pure energy or for some sort of advanced material? I'm picturing something that can cut through just about anything.
It's a great question. Maybe it's a combination of both, harnessing some sort of energy field to create a cutting edge, or maybe it's a material so strong and thin that it can slice through even the toughest hides. It's fascinating to imagine the technology behind it.
I'm picturing something out of a space western movie, all sleek and chrome with a futuristic hum. But back to the Barlows. They really do embody that classic frontier spirit of resourcefulness. They're not just wrangling star whales. They're understanding their behavior, their needs, their, as you said earlier, quirks.
It's more than just brute force. They've developed a symbiotic relationship with these creatures, learning to anticipate their movements, their reactions. It's ecological knowledge combined with good old-fashioned cowboy intuition.
It reminds me of that scene where Cyrus uses a specific type of space plant to calm down his agitated star whale during the stampede. It's like he's got this innate connection with the creatures.
That's a great example of how the Barlows use their knowledge of the ecosystem to their advantage. They're not just fighting against their environment. They're working with it, using it to outsmart their adversaries.
And then there's Rusty, Ma's acid-spitting beetle beast. It's not just about the acid, is it? What do you think the author was trying to convey by giving Ma this particular companion?
I think Rusty represents more than just a weapon or a mode of transportation. There's a sense of loyalty, of companionship there. Rusty's not just a tool, he's an extension of Ma's strength and her connection to the land.
That's an interesting point. It makes me think about the bonds that form between humans and animals in these extreme environments. They depend on each other for survival.
Exactly. It's a partnership, a mutual understanding that goes beyond just rider and mount.
And let's not forget about Mary and her unique approach to defense. Those stink bombs might seem silly, but they're surprisingly effective.
Mary's stink bombs are a perfect example of thinking outside the box. She might not have her brother's strength or her mother's experience, but she finds her own way to contribute, using her knowledge of alien plants and their, shall we say, pungent properties.
It's not brute force, it's tactical odor warfare.
Hmm.
And it works. She manages to disrupt the rustlers' plans and give the Barlows an edge.
It speaks to the Barlows' overall approach. Use what you have, know your enemy, and don't be afraid to get a little creative.
I love how this story takes those classic Western tropes and throws them into this bizarre yet believable world. You've got cowboys and rustlers, but instead of horses, they're riding giant space cows and acid-spitting beetles, and instead of six-shooters, you've got laser lassos and stink bombs. It's a brilliant blend of familiar and strange.
It's a reminder that even in the most fantastical settings, human ingenuity and adaptability can shine through.
It makes you wonder what kinds of challenges we might face in the future, and what creative solutions we might come up with. Maybe someday we'll be wrangling our own space cows.
Who knows what the future holds? But if Wrangling Star Beasts has taught us anything, it's that humans are remarkably resourceful. We find ways to adapt, to innovate, to survive.
And sometimes the best solutions are the ones that make you laugh.
Yeah.
Even if it's because of a well-placed stink bomb. Speaking of those unconventional solutions, in the next part we'll delve into the concept of frontier justice and how it plays out in this lawless corner of the galaxy.
You know, Wrangling Star Beasts really got me thinking about this whole idea of frontier justice out on the edge of the galaxy, where the nearest marshal is, like you said, a month's ride away.
Right.
People have to kind of make their own rules.
Absolutely.
Like the Barlows have their own code. It's almost like a moral compass that's guided by necessity and a deep sense of what's right.
Well, and their brand of justice, it isn't about revenge, is it? It's about protection.
Yeah.
They're defending their family, their livelihood, their way of life.
It's like they're not just taking the law into their own hands, they're establishing a sense of order in this untamed corner of the galaxy. Yeah, it's really fascinating how this story kind of explores this. The Barlows aren't heartless. They're not out for blood. But they do make it clear that actions have consequences, even on the fringes of civilization.
It raises some interesting questions, too, about what happens when traditional law enforcement is absent. How do communities form their own systems of justice?
Right.
It's almost like a social experiment on a galactic scale.
And Wrangling Star Beasts doesn't shy away from the complexity of it either. The wrestlers aren't just faceless bad guys, you know. They're driven by their own motivations, their own sense of desperation.
Right, they're just trying to survive.
Exactly. Makes you think about the gray areas of morality. When survival is at stake.
Yeah, it's not black and white. There's a lot of nuance to it. And the Barlows aren't always perfect either.
That's right.
They make mistakes. They get angry. They're human. And I think that's part of what makes them so relatable.
Absolutely. Their flaws make them more real, more believable, and it makes their triumphs even more satisfying.
For sure. I think Wrangling Star Beasts is so much more than just a space western. It's a story about family resilience, ingenuity, and the challenges of forging a new life on the frontier. But it also asks us to think about our own values and how they might be tested in extreme circumstances.
It really is a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it. It makes you question, it makes you wonder, it makes you want to saddle up and head out to the stars yourself.
Well, folks, that about wraps up our time with Wrangling Star Beasts. We hope you enjoyed this wild ride through the galactic frontier.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Be sure to rate and follow the show for more Cowboys Versus Ninjas. Until next time, keep your lassos sharp and your stink bombs handy. And remember, adventure awaits.